Hi all. Here's the summer newsletter preview entitled Jupiter Exalted, Our Savior's Walk Among Us. And it starts with a quote from an anonymous Zen Master, quote, "The entire universe is my true personality," unquote. Here we go. Delighted to share some very encouraging news. For the first time in 12 years, magnanimous, abundance-loving Jupiter glides into heart-centered, nurturing Cancer, the sign of his exaltation, meaning highest expression, on June 10th. This kicks off a year-long theme of learning how to genuinely enjoy giving and receiving abundance on all levels, both inner and outer, but most especially love in all its varieties. Mystics and physicists agree that the universe is composed of an infinite supply of energy. Mystics know that all energy is conscious. All energy is conscious. Physicists, not so much. Either way, energy is the currency that the universe, as well as each of us, runs on. Furthermore, heart energy is the gold standard, as it is what we're all truly seeking, even if it may appear in disguised forms, until we're conscious enough to appreciate what is priceless beyond doubt. Consequently, with beneficent Jupiter in his happy place, there's no better time than the coming year to base all our choices on this most precious criterion, as it will undoubtedly give the most utmost meaning and value to our lives and beyond. Why would we even think of settling for anything less? This means that the universe is encouraging us to, 1, expand and deepen our heart opening to receive an infinite supply of divine love, divine heart energy, and allow it to fill our being down to the cellular level until we are overflowing. 2, experience the bliss of channeling this universal transpersonal love to all those in the life of the earth plane itself with no drainage. The bonus is we no longer need to feel stingy with ourselves or others because there's an infinite supply. 3, play the game of life more and more with those who are also operating from this gold standard of always putting the heart first, by preferring to alleviate suffering and to love without conditions rather than being quote-unquote right. From this new energetic tone of Jupiter in Cancer, we can be sure that if we make giving and receiving love and nurturing to ourselves first and then all others a priority, the universe will more than meet us halfway. Yay. So let's begin by opening our heart channels wide, vertically and horizontally, and start feeling the love flowing in and out. In the short run, it helps if we keep in mind that we won't necessarily receive the same quantity back from the same direction in which the abundance was given. It's usually more of a pay it forward or receive it elsewhere or vice versa. But not to worry, as sharing abundance always evens out in the end of the overall balance. It's a universal law. So what have we got to lose? Think about this. Just about everyone on the planet on the little self, ego, personality levels is imperfect, wounded, and mentally ill, meaning my definition of mentally ill is suffering under the illusion that we're separate from Source. But it's only a question of degree. But to the level at which we can maintain our spiritual condition by remembering that we're one with Source, unity consciousness, aka one being with billions of faces, then to this degree are we granted a daily reprieve from any soul sickness. The fact is that most of us forget our true eternal identity from time to time, at least momentarily, as part of the earth game of cosmic hide and seek. And for more on this, there's a link to my philosophy on my website called Leela. This isn't bad news per se, it's just the way it is. However, if we can remember to embrace ourselves and others as all made up of the exact same divine energy, then, even at the level of relative truth of what is in Earth School, an amazing shift occurs. 1. From this place of compassion and non-judgment, we can allow our birthright of an infinite supply of divine heart energy to flow into healing our wounds and the wounds of our fellows. 2. The desire to nurture and receive nurturing becomes ever more joyful as we access this abundant flow of universal love as our primary feeding source. 3. Our relationships evolve from a lower chakra power struggle of who's giving more to whom, to a heart-centered space of sharing in the ocean of cosmic consciousness, aka the flow state, where we can see the divine one peeking out through everyone. And then there's a link to Joan Osborne's song, One of Us, and some of the lyrics I put in the newsletter. I'll just read a bit. What if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger on the bus, trying to make his way home, back up to heaven all alone, nobody calling on the phone, except for the Pope maybe in Rome. This view will enhance our heart energies exponentially as it personifies divine grace descending. The Taoists call this the gentle rain. For those of you who are ready to open to this higher truth of seeing a glimpse of God, aka the divine spark in everyone, I foresee moments of spiritual awakening, cosmic bliss, and karmically fortuitous experiences that will resonate through the year and for the remainder of this incarnation and beyond. If you're wondering how to make the most of this Jupiter transit, an astrological reading from a soul-level karmic perspective is an exceptionally useful tool to gift yourself to loved ones with. Then you'll be awake and alert to all the opportunities coming your way and won't miss out on receiving abundance in ways you might not have even thought of on your own. For once, we know which areas of our life will be most positively highlighted this year. We can focus more energy and attention on reaping this harvest. This will lay the foundation for a 12-year cycle of abundance flowing into those parts of us and our personal reality that Jupiter is shining on through July 2026. And there's a link for my Jupiter message in the writings. From a broader perspective, it's on Infinite Abundance, Owning Our Inner Jupiter, which covers all 12 signs. But if you want to know where Jupiter's transiting this year, you can set up your chart for free at astro.com and look for the house that has Cancer in it. That's where your Jupiter is. I appreciate how many of you took the time to thank me for my last newsletter in which I suggested bowing with our full heart minds to those who are suffering globally as a way to acknowledge and validate their courageously choosing such challenging incarnations. I've been doing this myself every day and find that it assuredly helps me feel less powerless and keeps me from falling into extreme empathy, especially if I lapse into doom scrolling. In addition, a client shared with me that she was feeling helpless about a friend's excruciating battle with cancer, and that bowing to him energetically to acknowledge his soul's courageous choice within such difficult karmic circumstances helped her feel like she was being more proactively supported. And my last newsletter is a link to Life's Master Class, Chaos and Clarity, Destruction and Rebirth, Heaven and Hell, Joy and Sorrow. You can listen to it on YouTube, and it's on my website. And then a quote by Rumi, "What is the body? That shadow of your love that somehow contains the entire universe," unquote. And moving into part 2 of the newsletter, this is a two-parter. There's a quote by one of my favorite philosophers who's still alive, Nassim Nicolas Taleb. He's the author of many books, but one is The Black Swan. And his quote is, "The world has changed too fast for our genetic makeup," unquote. So now that I have your heart-centered attention, I'd like to address an even deeper theme which I received as a download about the seemingly unfathomable reasons why we have so many billions of souls incarnated at the present time who appear on the external superficial levels to be mentally quote-unquote different in some way from what is considered the quote-unquote norm. This being quote-unquote not normal to various degrees is based on the narrow and shallow confines of the left brain-oriented mass consciousness, always the lowest common denominator. But over the next few generations, I predict that all these special souls will be considered canaries in the coal mine of 3D in exploring and expressing infinite variations in brain functioning to add to the human range of experience. When I Googled neural diversity, I was astonished and moreover quite elated to discover that almost 25% of the global population of over 8 billion souls already classify themselves as neurodivergent. Going forward, with over 62 million deaths and over 125 million births every year globally, there will be a steady increase in this type of development until we reach a tipping point in which neurodiversity as a categorization becomes completely obsolete as it becomes the new normal. Yes, neurodiversity will become the new normal. I'm convinced that it's from this pool of quote-unquote not normal souls incarnate that the possible salvation of the human race will come, as well as the saving of the planet before it becomes uninhabitable. For, quote-unquote, the experiment now in progress, as my channels have always called the Earth Game, is not necessarily pre-programmed from its creation to achieve 100% success in the probabilities of fulfilling the goals and purposes of the reincarnational cycles of the Earth plane, in the Earth plane. This is especially so if our experiment stays on its present course of looking for solutions primarily through the analytical mind. The original objective and design of the Earth plane involves the concept that ultimately all souls in 3D will become free of their karmic wheels and grow into being co-creators with all that is. This vision is realized through countless incarnations using linear space and time, the density of the earth plane, and the karmic laws of cause and effect as training wheels. Then, as we step into our final earth school roles, usually as bodhisattvas, our job is to alleviate suffering and mirror to others their divine spark. For, in the end, what else is there to do but pass this message on? Like I said, this is a very long-range perspective and not even applicable beyond the scope of this plane of relative truth. For in higher realms of more absolute truth, there's actually never any arriving at an ultimate goal. As we're always at halftime in the game, in a limitless loop of ever-deepening awakening, or as the Taoists say, quote, the eighth and final body of consciousness of the void has infinite levels, unquote. At some point during ongoing psychic therapy with my clients, they always ask me without fail, quote, what's the point of the whole earth game anyway, unquote? And I respond, not too tongue-in-cheek, that, quote, the goddess was bored and we're the live entertainment, unquote. So now I hope you're prepared to have your minds and hearts get blown even wider open, as there couldn't be a better time to present some perhaps radical new ideas. That's because this year we have the rare event of 3 outer planets changing sign, along with Pluto just into Aquarius. And especially because all the planetary energies are encouraging us with the same theme, to open our minds up to something new. Karmic teacher Saturn and spiritualizing Neptune are both moving in sync into initiating Aries, along with revolutionary Uranus, the trickster planet of awakening, moving into mentally flexible Gemini. So here we go. Firstly, there's a long list of labels of what constitutes neurodiversity. Here's a short one. First is autism, the full spectrum of which runs from nonverbal to various forms of Asperger's. When you think about autism, you likely consider the challenges that people face, including social phobias, excessive worrying, avoidance behaviors, rigidity in routines, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. However, even with these challenges, numerous autistic children and adults demonstrate nearly superhuman abilities in specific areas. These people are identified as autistic savants, in other words, geniuses. I have a list of 15 famous geniuses with autism and or Asperger's, and after each one on the list, there's a paragraph describing the legacy they left for mankind, as well as the challenges they lived with from their autism/Asperger's. So I'm not going to read the paragraph about each famous person. I'll just list them, because you probably already know the legacy they've left mankind, and they all had similar challenges with their Asperger's and autism. Albert Einstein, Isaac Newton, Charles Darwin, Nicolas Tesla, Thomas Jefferson, Michelangelo, Steve Jobs, Alfred Kinsey, Bobby Fischer, Tim Burton, Andy Warhol, Stephen Wiltshire, he's a British artist, Ludwig Wittgenstein, Amadeus Mozart, Elon Musk, and I just had a little mention that since he is also mentally ill in many other ways, Musk is, including exhibiting sociopathic tendencies, he is more of a cautionary tale than anyone else on this list. And finally, Temple Grandin, the one female on the list of famous autistic Asperger geniuses. And I will read what I wrote about her. Her endless curiosity and connection with animals led her to a career of creating more humane conditions for livestock, including in slaughterhouses, where her contributions helped revolutionize aspects of the cattle industry. Less pain and suffering for animals is her legacy. On her severe autism as a child, and on the notion that autism wasn't prevalent 30 or 40 years ago, but is today, she said, they would have just been sent to an institution. They were labeled, quote-unquote, mentally retarded years ago. I escaped going to an institution. I was the kind of kid to go to an institution in the 50s, but fortunately a neurologist referred me to a little speech therapy clinic the two ladies taught out of their basement in their home, unquote. For more, please read this world-renowned autism expert sharing her thoughts with NBC News after RFK delivered controversial remarks on autistic people, and there's a link to the quote, to the article, very important, as Autism Ignites a National Conversation. Temple Grandin has something to say. Now, can you imagine just for a moment how wildly different and unfortunately deficient the world would be without the contributions of all the above unique minds I just listed, as well as millions more like them, even though many lived in obscurity? And the next on the short list of neurodiversity is dyslexia and ADHD, meaning learning difficulties with reading, writing, and spelling. A brief list is Einstein again, Richard Branson, Spielberg, Bill Gates, and Da Vinci, to name a few. Then on the list of neurodiversity, the short list, there's global developmental delay, meaning this is where a child takes longer to reach certain developmental milestones, which might include learning to walk or talk or interacting with others socially and emotionally. And then there is the dyspraxia, which is a developmental coordination disorder causing clumsiness affecting physical movement. And last but certainly not least, we have alien development, which I define as when more than 51% of the soul's development has been in other dimensions. This means that for these souls their true home is elsewhere, and they're here in 3D to round out their soul development. Most, if not all, forget their assignment once they're incarnated in human form until reminded. I can't tell you how many clients over the years have been so relieved to hear about their preponderance of sojourns in other higher frequency dimensions, as their forgetting of their alien development had caused intense feelings of alienation, from the earth plane and other humans, as well as disturbing thoughts as if something was fundamentally wrong with them, like they're only in disguise in a human form. These feelings are so common, especially with many of the teens and preteens which I've worked with, that they may be longing to take their marbles and go home, aka checking out or dropping their body. But once reminded of their sole purposes here and their true multidimensional identity, they are so relieved that most can then consciously choose to come in for a landing, become more fully embodied, and work and play with who they are in the bigger picture, just the way they are. I found these kids benefit greatly from standing Qigong, as well as learning psychic empowerment practices, all on my website. Most of these alien souls have exceptionally brilliant, genius-level insights within their potentials if they're allowed to flourish and not be forced into any cookie-cutter mold in which left brain smarts is considered the primary level of intelligence that is validated in our dying mass beliefs value system. Specialized schooling that nurtures these souls' right brain creativity and intuition is one of the optimal ways for these kids to accelerate the flowering of their distinctive genius. Their major challenge is learning how to deal with 3D density, the physical senses, and human emotions. They also usually have many other neurodivergent traits like autism, Asperger's, ADHD, as well as other developmental anomalies. So while these alien souls are here in human disguise, as are we all more or less, to round out their development, they're also here with more and more coming in every day to help the human race get unstuck by bringing in unique and exceptionally new ideas to help us heal and grow, personally and en masse, to save the planet and raise the level of the mass consciousness like no one without alien development could ever do. The way their minds work is the literal definition of quote-unquote out of the box. Personally, my own soul development is on the borderline with 50% in other dimensions and 50% development here. So I'm equally fond of the earth plane as well as higher frequency planes of consciousness. How about you? For much more, I've written at length here, and there's a link to my article, Aliens Are Us, which I encourage you to read if you think you're one with a lot of alien development. It would be helpful. Adding to this list of saviors is the idea of the quote-unquote 36 righteous ones, who are a group of anonymous, hidden, righteous individuals believed to be present in every generation in the Jewish tradition. They're said to be so righteous that the world exists because of them, and their presence prevents divine anger from destroying the world. I've always strongly felt that Oliver Sacks, the great neurologist, who was also off the charts neurodivergent, was one of these righteous ones, as he could see and accept all those he worked with who suffered from extreme forms of being different or disabled in their full, uniquely imperfect/perfect humanness, exactly as they are. To expand this Judaic concept of the righteous ones way beyond the legendary 36, it has been a given for millennium in the mystical wings of both Western and Eastern religions that monks and nuns who spent solitary lives meditating alone or in groups were helping maintain a primary emotional tone of peace on the planet, thus keeping it from destroying itself. I would also posit that those souls in disguise who choose who chose to come in with severe disabilities or manifest disabling illnesses later in whatever form are also righteous ones, as their suffering and grace expand and deepen the range to what is possible within the human condition, thus keeping our hearts open enough to keep us from destroying the world. Obviously, not all those on the autism spectrum will become famous because their out-of-the-box downloads of unique and innovative new ways of looking at reality will dramatically and mostly positively change the nature of reality in 3D. But rather, I will say that all on the spectrum, and with ADHD, and with alien development, are in the vanguard of what is needed now to accelerate the evolution of consciousness, which is somewhat stuck in the left-brain analytical mindset with outmoded ideas about what truly gives meaning and value to a life. The message here is that what gives purpose is certainly not as reductive as thinking that the only way to be a productive member of society one needs to contribute by working and paying taxes. How ridiculous. When I've done soul readings with many parents of severely disabled, nonverbal, autistic kids, it becomes clear that even these extremely challenging incarnations have deeper meaning and value as they open up their caretakers, parents, and loved ones' hearts like nothing lesser ever could. In fact, I work with many parents of autistic kids who will need consistent care throughout their lives. When I tune into these kids, it's quite clear that they're living in their own worlds/realities with behaviors to help protect themselves from the bombardment of stimuli coming at them on all levels, which is excruciating to their overly sensitive nervous systems. So they create their own defense systems and operational standards through their behavior. But most importantly, on the soul level, these souls are completely fine and whole and not disabled in any way, but rather their autism is their disguise in this specific incarnation for very specific purposes. For each incarnation is a role the soul plays like an actor exploring their range on the great stage of life, to be dropped with the body, exit left. So they're here to give their parents the opportunity to heal their karma and open their hearts like nothing lesser could. And some of the parents I've worked with before having these special needs kids were definitely stuck in a karmic rut of overdevelopment of the ego identity through their lower chakras and or their dark shadow sides for too long. And these kids coming to them is a gift in disguise, as they are. For some parents, nothing less than having a special needs child will get their attention as a wake-up call and course correction towards a different way of being with a heart-centered value system. Here's another case study with a different karmic perspective. I had a client decades ago named Stanley who came to me for a soul reading referred by his therapist. He was in his 50s, lived with his parents, and was significantly mentally impaired in the IQ developmental range. Now, he would be labeled as someone with moderate intellectual disability. When I asked him what his questions were, he took out a piece of paper and he said, quote, "I want to know why I am the way I am and why I'm here," unquote. Very succinct and perfectly to the point. His reading shared many past lives of overdevelopment of the left brain analytical mind, and an overattachment for identity on being the smartest guy in the room and judging all others as less than if they weren't as smart as him. So his soul courageously chose to come in this time with his karmic left brain development mostly sealed, so that he could work on his soul assignment of opening the heart and heal his karmic rut of left brain identity. When I came out of trance, he exclaimed, quote, "I always knew I was smart," unquote. And he also understood that he had been mean to his parents who were his servants in a past life, so he was here to be loving with them, as well as it was suggested that he volunteer in a soup kitchen, as he would really blossom with the heart-level interchange of giving and receiving with others. If you are the parent of a special needs child, please know that by choosing to care for them with as much help and support as needed, and keeping them out of solely warehouse institutions, not only is it opening your heart more than anything lesser ever could, but it is saving mankind one child at a time. And in my holographic view, saving one equals saving all. I've done soul readings for dozens, if not hundreds of souls who have survivor's guilt and fall into what I call a Mother Teresa karmic rut, in which they have secret shame and self-reproach that it's not their bliss to bathe leper souls in Calcutta. Here's a case study on this. I had a client who was terrified and phobic of ever going to India with his Indian friends because he felt that feeling all the suffering there would be too much for his tender heart. Yet at the same time, he was terrified and phobic about visiting his mother with advanced Alzheimer's. But as the only child, felt obligated to make the weekly 6-hour round trip to her nursing home. When he came for his reading, he said that his dread of that weekly visit was permeating and ruining his life, as he had lost his joie de vivre. The reading said that his allotted karma for this life would be complete if he paid it off by visiting his mother every week by choice, as an opportunity for healing, not as obligation. Then he would no longer need to feel guilty about all the suffering in India and the world, as the reading said, quote, all he needed to do was take care of his mother, not the world, unquote, even though she was often rageful and no longer recognized him. He was able to visit with joy after the reading for several years until she passed, and with his karma clarified, did not allow this time to diminish his joy. Ta-da. On a personal note, I had significant developmental delays in learning to speak and read, and had to go to speech therapy and have special reading classes, and also self-identify with having Asperger's, which manifests as having more challenges in large groups, being overly sensitive to any assaults to any of the sensitives, and do much better one-on-one. When I saw the movie about Temple Grandin's life, I wept with recognition. I first started writing in detail on this theme in my 2019 newsletter, which contains in more detailed form the occupational hazards that have come with my being a trans channel this time. I especially encourage you to read this one if you self-identify with any neurodiversity in yourself or your loved ones, or any form of disability, including environmental chemical sensitivity, chronic fatigue syndrome, Epstein-Barr, long COVID, or chronic Lyme disease. And the newsletter I'm encouraging you to read, the newsletter I'm encouraging you to read is Mid-Fall Quickening Prognosis, Cases of Mystical Mutants and Evolutionary Guinea Pigs Are on the Rise. Then there's a quote by Albert Einstein, who had Asperger's. Quote, we are slowed down sound and light waves, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the cosmos. We are souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play the music, unquote. In closing, wishing us all a timeless summer of being so open in the flow that giving and receiving love in all its varieties become as one in the eternal now. So let's enjoy the trip, even if we're in the Kali Yuga. And, as a final quote, I have the lyrics to John Lennon's song, Imagine. Imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try, no hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries, it isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions, I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, a brotherhood of man. Imagine all the world, imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one. Hope you enjoy.